In the 1960s, there were around 50,000 pig farms in Australia. Today, there are less than 1,400, and yet the total number of pigs bred and slaughtered for food has increased. As of 2015, 49 farms housed 60% of the country's total pig population. Most pigs bred for food begin life in a farrowing crate, a small pen with a central cage, designed to allow the piglets to feed from their mother, the sow, while preventing her from moving around. The frequency of stillborn or mummified piglets generally increases with each litter as the sows' bodies become less capable of handling the large litter sizes encouraged by the industry. 10 to 18% of piglets who are born alive won't make it until weaning age, succumbing to disease, starvation, or dehydration, or being accidentally crushed by their trapped mothers. Included in the death toll are the runts of the litter, who are considered economically unviable and killed by staff. Those who survive the first few days are mutilated without pain relief, their tails and teeth cut to reduce cannibalism, and pieces cut from their ears or tags punched in as a means of identification. They are taken from their mothers at 3 to 5 weeks of age. Most are destined for slaughter around 5 months later. As they age, they are moved into grower pens, crowded together in their own waste. Some female pigs are kept on to replace the sows in the breeding cycle, carefully selected for their perceived ability to produce large litters. Most pig farms utilize artificial insemination rather than natural mating, as it allows them to impregnate up to 30 to 40 female pigs from a single boar. Workers collect the semen by masturbating the boars, then insert it into the sows via a raised catheter known as a pork stork. Boars are still physically used to excite the females prior to insemination, but are prevented from actually mating. When confirmed pregnant, the sow is moved into one of 2 types of confined housing for the entirety of her 16-week gestation. Sow stalls are individual cages in which, like the farrowing crates, sows are only able to take 1 or 2 steps forward or backwards and are unable to turn around. While gradually being phased out by the majority of piggeries in Australia, sow stalls remain entirely legal with no penalties for keeping sows confined to them for longer than the voluntary limit of 5 days. This is similar to the apparent ban on sow stalls in the European Union, which actually allows up to 4 weeks in them per pregnancy. When given the choice, pigs will relieve themselves far away from where they sleep and eat. The extreme confinement takes a heavy psychological toll. The alternative, group housing, sees pregnant pigs packed into small concrete pens. A lack of space and stimuli can cause the pigs to become aggressive. Those who fall into the effluent system through gaps in the flooring are left to starve or drown in the river of waste. A week before they are due to give birth, they're moved into the farrowing crate cages, where they'll remain for the next 4 to 6 weeks. Unable to exercise, the sow's muscles will weaken to the point where she has difficulty standing up or lying down. To minimize muscle wastage, workers will force her to stand up at least once daily. She'll develop pressure sores from the hard surfaces, or prolapses and infections from the physical strain of repeated farrowing in poor conditions. Which can also lead to partial paralysis, preventing her from reaching the food and water at the front of her cage. Or can even lead to death in the cage. She'll watch helplessly as her piglets fall ill and die. Or get mutilated and abused by workers until they are taken away from her. She'll endure this cycle 4 times over 2 years before she's replaced and sent to slaughter, or killed and dumped on site. The term bred free range simply means that pigs are born outside in small huts, but then spend the rest of their lives in sheds, facing the same overcrowding, health, and behavioral issues as at any pig farm, whilst being kept knee-deep in their own waste. Capable of living 10 to 12 years, most pigs are killed at just 5 to 6 months old, packed in transportation trucks at the piggery and driven often long distances to the slaughterhouse without food, water, or protection from extreme heat or cold. At the slaughterhouse, they'll wait in small concrete or metal holding pens, typically overnight, still without food and with limited or no access to water. In the morning, they are forcefully herded to the kill floor, often with an electric prodder. The most common method of stunning and killing pigs in Australia, used at all major pig abattoirs and touted as the most humane and efficient option, is the carbon dioxide gas chamber. A system of rotating cages lowers the fully conscious pigs 2 or 3 at a time into the heavily concentrated gas, which begins to burn their eyes, nostrils, sinuses, throat, and lungs while suffocating them. Lower concentrations of carbon dioxide would cause less pain and stress, but would take much longer to render the pigs unconscious, making it economically unviable. Sows are sent into the chamber gondolas one at a time. Because of their size, the gas is less effective, with some emerging partly conscious, in which case they may also be electrically stunned afterwards. Tipped out the other side of the chamber, the pigs' throats are cut and then they are bled out. Electrical stunning used at smaller slaughterhouses has a much higher chance of failure. Incorrect amperage, positioning of the stunner, or length of time applied, or failing to cut the throat quickly enough, can lead to the pig being merely paralyzed and unable to move, while still capable of feeling pain, or regaining consciousness while bleeding out. Blinking and rhythmic breathing are strong indicators of consciousness. One by one, they are picked off in front of each other. Captive bolt pistols are another option used by smaller slaughterhouses. The penetrative variety fire a rod through the skull of the animal to permanently damage their brain, preventing them from regaining consciousness, while non-penetrative bolt pistols deliver blunt force trauma much like a hammer. Effective stunning requires the gun to be angled in position at the correct part of the head, which is often difficult if the head is not restrained. Having witnessed their litter mates being killed before them, or being able to smell the blood on the floor, they are reluctant to enter the knockbox. The bolt gun is even less effective on larger pigs, like sows. For them, a rifle may be used as an alternative. In this case, accuracy is even more difficult. After they've been bled out, pigs are dropped into tanks of scalding water in order to soften their skin and remove bristles and hair. Those who haven't been stunned and killed properly finally die by drowning. The waste products, the skins, bones, hoofs, guts, and fat, are trucked to the rendering plant to be turned into lard for use in food, soaps, lubricants, or biofuel, or into other products like gelatin. Wild pigs were introduced to Australia with the first fleet, and now occupy around 40% of the country, mainly in Queensland and New South Wales. The practice of pig dogging involves hunters releasing aggressively trained dogs to track, chase, and maul live pigs, keeping them pinned down until the hunters are able to catch up and finish them off with a knife.
Get hold of him! Yeah! Woo! Get hold of him! Good boy! Get him! Stick that cunt! Yeah! Yeah! Woo! Yeah! Careful! Got him now! Good dogs! Woo! Fuck yeah! Yeah! Well done.
Despite wild pigs being declared a pest animal, it's not uncommon for hunters to release young piglets into national parks so they can return later to hunt them.
For egg-laying hens, life begins at the hatchery. Eggs collected from the parent birds are stored, incubated, and hatched over 31 days. The male and female chicks are sorted onto separate conveyor belts. Here at Australia's largest hatchery, they've been genetically modified to make the males a different color than the females, allowing for quick sorting. Unable to ever produce eggs themselves, and a completely different breed to the chickens used for meat, the male chicks are considered waste products, as are any females perceived to be deformed or weak. They are sorted onto a separate conveyor belt from the healthy females in their first day of life, and sent into an industrial blender called a macerator. This practice is legal and referred to as humane by the RSPCA. Smaller hatcheries may use carbon dioxide gas or simply suffocate the chicks in plastic bags. All commercial egg farms, caged, barn-laid, free-range, organic, RSPCA approved, involve the killing of male chicks to a total of roughly 12 million per year in Australia. Meanwhile, the healthy females continue on to painful debeaking machines. Hens are debeaked to minimize the harm they can do to each other in the confinement of egg farms. The chicks are then stacked in trays and trucked to pullet rearing farms, where they'll remain for 4 months until they begin laying eggs. A small number of males will be spared the macerator in order to serve with a selection of hens as parent birds, laying and fertilizing the eggs for the hatchery. The other hens are sent out to egg farms across the country. Around 2/3 of the 18 million layer hens at any given time in Australia are housed in battery cages. Each shed can contain up to 100,000 hens with between 4 and 20 per cage, each afforded a space smaller than an A4 sheet of paper. They are unable to stretch their wings or express any natural behaviors such as dust bathing, perching, or foraging. Due to decades of genetic manipulation and selective breeding, they lay an egg almost every day for a total of up to 330 per year, compared to the 10 to 15 that a wild hen would lay. As they age, the poor environment and physical stress of frequent egg laying takes a toll on their health, indicated by the gradual loss of all of their feathers and an increasingly pale comb suggesting anemia. Deaths inside the cages are common, and due to the size of the facilities can be easily missed for long periods of time, forcing the surviving hens to live on top of the rotting carcasses. Newer cage systems collect the feces onto conveyor belts beneath the cages, while older systems allow it to pile up underneath. Birds who manage to escape the cages are left to die in these manure pits. At 18 months of age, after living in the cage for over a year, their egg production will have slowed significantly enough to be considered spent. They are depopulated, pulled from the cages and stuffed into crates, often resulting in bone fractures due to the rough handling.
How often do their bones break?
Every time I've done one, they're broken.
Yeah?
Yeah, every single time. Stop your wings and I'll break your other leg.
They are either gassed to death and then buried or rendered, or sent to the slaughterhouse and replaced by new 4-month-old hens. Up until 2016, there were no national standards on what can be claimed as free-range eggs. Now, free-range farms are capped at a maximum outdoor density of 10,000 hens per hectare, 1 per square meter, though they still spend most of their time packed together in large sheds. Chickens naturally form and live within a social hierarchy called a pecking order, but are only able to recognize around 100 other chickens. In sheds or paddocks with thousands of other birds, their inability to maintain this pecking order results in chaos. The weak birds are picked on with no way to escape. Disease spreads rapidly. An outbreak of avian influenza at a New South Wales free-range egg farm in 2013, believed to be contracted from wild ducks, led to the culling of over 400,000 farmed hens. Many of the larger free-range farms also have cage farms on the same property, with the eggs from both ending up in the same packing shed. A 2009 analysis of Egg Corporation data indicated that as many as 1 in 6 eggs sold as free-range were laid by caged or barn hens. As with caged farms, free-range hens are sent to slaughter from just 18 months of age, far short of their 10-year natural lifespan. At the slaughterhouse, the hens are shackled upside down on a moving line. They are lowered into a bath of electrified water to stun them prior to their throats being cut by an automated blade. But if they lift their heads, they can miss the stun bath, facing the blade fully conscious, and ultimately drowning in scalding water further down the process. The slaughtered hens largely end up in lower-grade chicken meat products such as mince, or rendered into poultry meal for use in pet food or to be fed back to farm animals.